The leader of India's National People's Party said that DNA testing has proven that Brahmins, the highest Hindu noble priest caste, were ancient Aryan settlers from Russia. Quote, "The DNA test shows no Brahmins belong to this country and are from Russia and have now settled here." While this statement has received a lot of backlash on Twitter and social media, it matches the official position of the Indian government, as well as accredited anthropologists that have evaluated the DNA evidence, some of which I will go over now. A recent genetic study titled "The Genomic Formation of South and Central Asia" analyzed genome-wide data from over 500 ancient individuals, meaning DNA samples of people that lived thousands of years ago compared to people living in present-day groups in South Asia, settling major questions about India's history and what that means for various theories of how civilization arose in the subcontinent. Authored by over 90 scientists from around the world, including scholars from Harvard, MIT, and the Max Planck Institute, the data documents a southward spread of genetic ancestry from the Eurasian steppe, correlating with the archaeologically known expansion of pastoralist sites from the Bronze Age over 4,000 years ago, starting around 2300 BC, mixing with earlier agriculturalists of Iran, then integrating farther south with people whose closest modern-day relatives are the tribes of the Andaman Islands. The indigenous natives of the Andaman Islands are among the various groups considered negrito, a Spanish term coined in the 16th century by missionaries used to mean little black person. Until contact, the Andamanese were strict hunter-gatherers. They did not practice cultivation. Their only weapon was the bow and harpoon, and they knew of no method for making fire in the 19th century.
The Sentinelese were first contacted by the government in 1991. The contact party under the administration is always accompanied by security. The arrow-shooting Sentinelese are a constant fear. It is yet to be discovered what the residents of North Sentinel Island call themselves. They have been indexed as contacted Sentinelese. Gifts of coconuts are means to overcome limited communication and uncertain vocabulary. Coconuts do not grow on these islands, but they are valued by the Sentinelese.
That is always there.
That is what? That is angry or?
No, they are not angry.
They're dancing.
That is one of the
Laha! 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 Dag! Dag! Miguel! Dag!
Please try to protect yourself. Any moment they can come.
Dag! Laha! Laha! Dag! Dag! Laha! Dag!
Daga means coconut. Laha means come here. These words are familiar to the Jarawa tribe. We do not know if the Sentinelese understand it.
The death of a Christian missionary in 2019 that went to the Sentinel Islands to try to convert the natives had drawn world attention to the small island's reclusive inhabitants, who killed him as he was trying to convert the tribal population to Christianity. Since then, most governments, anthropologists, and religious organizations have decided to allow the Sentinel Island natives to be alone. There have been peaceful interactions, such as the one you're viewing now, from the 90s, but the tribe came out to meet them in the ocean and did not feel like their land, homes, or women and children were being threatened. The expedition also brought gifts of coconuts, rather than an intent to convert them to a new religious ideology, which is not suggested and no longer encouraged by most organizations.
The estimated 90 Sentinelese continue to live as hunters and gatherers, solely dependent on food provided by nature.
The Sentinelese had a very mixed reaction towards us. In the first place, they cheerily waited us on the shore and they indicated their presence by walking down towards the beaches and then disappear. They are a very lively people who prefer to live in isolation, away from the mainstream of life.
The steppe population came in from the grasslands in Eastern Europe, corresponding to modern-day Ukraine, Russia, and Kazakhstan. The genetic research identifies that this steppe ancestry burst into India during a narrow time period dated between 2000 BC and 1500 BC. Once these steppe people entered India, they mixed with the Indus Valley people to create what is now called the ancestral North Indian grouping. However, a significant portion of the people of the Indus Valley civilization were pushed south when the steppe people entered. They then mixed with the ancient ancestral South Indians to form a group known as Ancestral South Indian population. For the next 2,000 years, Indians mixed freely. As a result, most modern South Asians are a mix of ancestral North Indian and ancestral South Indian. However, around 1900 years ago, Indian society calcified into ethnic groups who do not intermarry across caste lines, a societal structure which for the most part is maintained until today. Perhaps the biggest learning from this genetic research is that it explains the various languages South Asians speak, how a single language family, the Indo-European family, stretches all the way from Britain to Bangladesh and encompasses more than half of the modern world's population. It counts amongst its members ancient languages such as Sanskrit, Greek, and Latin, as well as modern tongues like English, Persian, and Hindi. The people who spread the Indo-European language family across Eurasia are the same steppe pastoralists who are key constituents in making up the modern Indian population. As the science paper states, its results provide evidence for the theory that these Indo-European or Aryan languages spread from the steppe. The earliest known people believed to have brought Indo-European languages and Indo-European culture to Scandinavia were probably the battle axe culture, an offshoot of the Proto-Aryan Yamnaya culture of the Pontic-Caspian steppe, and this gave rise to the Nordic Bronze Age, which is considered the ancestral civilization of the Germanic peoples. A genetic study published in Nature in June 2015 examined the remains of a battle axe male buried in Vibby, Sweden 5,000 years ago. He was found to be a carrier of the paternal haplogroup R1A1A1, the haplogroup attributed to the ancient Aryans that disseminated agricultural civilization, advanced metals, horses, chariots, and Indo-European languages and religions to the rest of the ancient world.
I'm just finishing off a studio session because we're making a new documentary about the Aryan civilization, trying to find out whether they existed or not, where their homeland was, what kind of language they spoke. And I've been in Siberia and Kazakhstan. This was because we were trying to find, as I said, the root of the Aryan culture. There are some incredible new excavations there, Bronze Age excavations. What's particularly fascinating about them is that these cities are covered with swastika imagery. So rather than just looking at them as an archaeologist, you have to think, what is the political implication of these places? And certainly a lot of people, a lot of very high up heads of state have gone to visit these digs to try to see if they should associate themselves with these swastikas, because this is probably where the Aryans, the original Aryans, lived and worshipped and founded what is probably the basis of Western and Eastern civilization. I was there with the chief archaeologist, Professor Zdanovic, and he drove me 7 hours out into the steppe grasslands. I had no idea where we were going. And he took me to this amazing expanse of grass. You couldn't really tell there was anything special about it. And suddenly, he didn't speak any English, but we kind of communicated by sign language. Suddenly, as he pointed to the ground, I realised that I was walking across a buried city. Every now and again, you suddenly notice these kind of ghostly shapes in the grassland, which were the shapes of fortresses and cattle sheds and homes and religious sites. And I would not have seen those had he not opened my eyes to what lay beneath my feet.
Archaeological digs have shown that the ancient town was inhabited by the forebears of the Aryan race.
Those ancient Aryans were credited with everything on Earth. They were even said to have discovered metals.
India is today dominated by the politics of Hindu nationalism, an ideology which is fiercely nativist and blindly rejects findings in genetics, linguistics, or archaeology. For example, it doesn't matter to many modern Indians that ancient Vedic texts describe the ancient Aryans as having horses and chariots, which are not present in India's fossil record until these migrations from the steppes.
The key word for horse in Sanskrit, asva, is exactly the same thousands of miles away in Lithuania. Horses are not known in the Indus civilization, and yet they're a key part of the society of the Rig Veda.
Chariots were drawn by the horses. They used to ride the horses, and it was very familiar animal to them. And I think that they tamed the horse at a very early period. This is the first movement of Aryans.
Is this the name they called themselves? What does it mean?
It actually means the civilized, the Sepehr, the socialized, civilized person,
yes, refined,
civilized, refined person.
Yeah.
And so they use the word Arya.
That's what they call themselves.
Yeah.
While the term Aryan is confined to describing a linguistic group in modern times, it is also etched into stone millennia ago in places like Iran by Darius the Great, who referred to his race and lineage as Aryan, which is why I use the term, which is also used to describe Buddha, who was a blue-eyed Aryan according to ancient writings, and why he is depicted with blue eyes even today in places like Thailand. While certain words such as Aryan have been changed into words like Indo-European, which means the same thing, certain historically Aryan symbols such as the swastika, which goes back many thousands of years, are being scrubbed from academia altogether. This brings up the question, why? Whatever the reason, what cannot be denied is the reality of 4,000-year-old blonde and red-headed mummies discovered in places like China, which predate the arrival of East Asians to the area by several millennia. Aryan mummies that share genetic affinities to the many blonde and red-headed mummies of pharaohs in Egypt, spanning all dynasties, reflected in the blue-eyed Egyptian statues of their nobility and pharaohs. Of course, many people refuse to follow the science, instead opting to follow their feelings, virtue signaling in favor of political correctness rather than scientific correctness. Which brings us back to Kumar Yadav, the leader of India's National People's Party, who's calling for the lower social classes to chase away their upper caste demographics, which has sparked a political class war in India. Yadav stated that since DNA tests prove Brahmins are from Russia and other European countries, and despite their Aryan ancestors being mentioned in ancient epics like the Ramayana, the Mahabharata, the Vedas, and Puranas, the traditionally noble class should leave and turn over power to his party. Many people in India are divided over these remarks, with some refusing to accept that there was any migrations to India ever. Of course, these same Indo-Europeans migrated into Europe, which many modern Europeans take offense to and reject, despite DNA showing that many Irish, for example, can also trace their ancestry to places like Eurasia and the Middle East. Even Vikings' genetics have been shown to have entered Northern Europe from places like Asia and the Mediterranean. As woke concepts are creeping into scientific fields such as anthropology, fewer resources are available to people that are interested in learning about the past, rather than being force-fed an egalitarian political ideology that strives to replace biological reality with fictitious equity. My name is Robert Sepehr. I'm an anthropologist. My published work is available on Amazon and through all other major book outlets. If you'd like to support my work, you can do that through patreon.com. There should be a link in the description. Please subscribe for future updates. Leave your thoughts below. Have a wonderful weekend, and I hope to see you again soon.